So let's bring in NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian and State Attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Ehrenberg. Chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, Peter Baker, is with us as well. And Ken, I'll start with you. What more do we know about the suspect, his background, criminal history, political affiliations?
58-year-old Alan Wesley Routh is his name, Mika, and some things about him are coming into focus. We don't have a full picture yet, obviously, but we're seeing an extensive criminal history in North Carolina, where he used to live, including what looks like some felony convictions, one charge of possessing a weapon of mass destruction back in 2002. Unclear exactly what that was, and it's also unclear, therefore, how he was able to obtain what the police said was an AK-47 style rifle with felony convictions. It also appears that at some point he moved to Hawaii, or at least said on his LinkedIn profile he was living in Hawaii. And then he became very interested in the Ukraine war and in recruiting soldiers to fight in the Ukraine war. There's even evidence that he tried to fight in the Ukraine war. And there's actually a video online of him in Kyiv being interviewed by journalists where he talks about coming to Ukraine and trying to sign up to fight. But because he had no military experience, they didn't accept him as a fighter. He then turned to try to recruit other people, including he had this scheme to recruit Afghan fighters to come and support the Ukrainian cause. He was very anti-Russian President Vladimir Putin. There's actually a Twitter account that we're going through and includes a tweet that suggests that he voted for Donald Trump in 2016, but then became disillusioned with Mr. Trump, perhaps in part over the Ukraine issue, and became very frustrated with Mr. Trump. There's also a lot of very weird stuff, frankly, on the Twitter account, including a tweet urging North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un to come to Hawaii. So it does appear this guy was not all there. And then we have just the facts that the police have released. He was preparing to film this incident with a GoPro, lying in wait for Mr. Trump 2 months after the other assassination attempts. It's just mind-boggling. A lot of questions today for the Secret Service as we learn more about this individual. Mika, Joe.
Dave Ehrenberg, you were at the press conference yesterday. What can you add?
Joe, as the local state attorney, we were working on some warrants and a motion for pretrial detention to make sure he stayed behind bars until the feds could get involved. And then after the press conference, they announced they were asserting jurisdiction. And so we stood down. That's pretty normal. And they're better equipped to handle this. I think he'll probably face charges of aggravated assault with a firearm against a federal law enforcement officer. They can get you up to 20 years in prison because apparently he pointed the AK-47 style rifle at a Secret Service agent who acted promptly and shot at him. So the only shots apparently that were fired were from the Secret Service. Also, he could be charged as an ex-felon in possession of a firearm. That's an easy charge. He can get up to 10 years for that. There is possibly a threat against a former president under federal law. You can get up to 5 years for that. So the feds are on top of this. He may see a magistrate today. There's up to 48 hours, but he could go before magistrate today. Ironically, where the golf club is right next to the jail. So this guy who was next to the golf course peering between a chain link fence is now at the golf course again, but this time peering between the bars of his cell, perhaps looking down upon the golfers in a few hours.
So let me ask you, Dave. So it sounds like the main charge against him won't be for a plot against the president. It looks like the main charge would be aggravated assault for pointing a weapon at a Secret Service agent, right?
Correct. You know, he's a former president, and so the assassination laws wouldn't apply to him in this case. So the most serious charge, based on what we know now, and there's an ongoing investigation, would be the aggravated assault with a firearm against a federal law enforcement officer. And although this guy clearly has a screw loose, it's going to be tough for him to claim an insanity defense, because to do so, you've got to have an established medical condition and not be able to know the difference between right and wrong. Well, what had happened after he got caught? He ran. After he was shot at, he ran to his car and took off north on I-95. He was found 45 minutes north. Apparently, he may have been trying to drive back to North Carolina, so he tried to flee. Well, why do you flee? Because you know what you did was wrong and you'd be in trouble for it. So it's going to be very hard for him to establish an insanity defense if this ever goes to trial, even though it's clear that he's got some mental issues.
So, Ken, this moment, of course, comes as Secret Service is already under intense scrutiny for what happened in Butler County, Pennsylvania. But as we discussed earlier in the show, it seems like yesterday, Secret Service, this was a triumph. They did their job and did it well and prevented the president from coming into harm's way. But talk to us about just the challenges the agency faces under congressional scrutiny with limited resources, and let's say the differences between the security detail given to the sitting president, Joe Biden, versus someone who is a former president, even if he is also the Republican nominee.
Well, that is the big question, Jonathan, and you're absolutely right. It was a triumph for those individual Secret Service agents who thwarted this attack, particularly the sharp-eyed person who saw the rifle poking through the fence line in the shrubs. That was incredible, really. But it also does raise some questions, particularly when you heard the Palm Beach County Sheriff say, well, if he was the current president, there may have been more security at that golf course. This is a man who had already had an assassination attempt where he was shot amid intelligence about Iranian threats to his life. If the Secret Service isn't throwing maximum amount of resources at Donald Trump, I don't know who they're putting resources at. I mean, in the sense that Donald Trump is taking more risks campaigning for president than Joe Biden is sitting in the White House. So it really does raise some questions about what resources are around Mr. Trump, given the threat picture. And really, you could extend that out to the other candidates now, because there are other, the vice presidential candidates, Kamala Harris, there's a huge stream of threats now coming in. But it really is a crisis moment for the Secret Service. They are reeling from what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. There are obviously the director resigned. There are now other people leaving who have been fingered for potentially having not done their jobs correctly in Butler. And now you have this situation. And look, Trump doesn't make it easy, right? He's out in public. He's out at outdoor rallies. He's playing golf. But that's what we pay this agency to do. If they need more money, they should tell Congress immediately. This is sort of their highest responsibility here. They prevented a catastrophe, but this should not happen again. The idea that a person got within a 500-yard or 300-yard, whatever it was, rifle shot of the president for the second time in 2 months is alarming.
NBC's Ken Dilanian and
well, I've got to say, though, Ken, and Dave, you can jump in on here. I've got to say, we don't know exactly the view, and maybe Dave Ehrenberg can help us, but if they were a couple of holes ahead, then from what we gathered at the press conference, again, maybe, Dave, you can help us out here, this shooter, potential shooter who apparently didn't fire his weapon, had an aim at Secret Service, but not at the president, who was a few holes behind. Is that correct, Dave? He never had a line of sight on Donald Trump?
That's the information I have, but the investigation is continuing. Now, keep in mind, this golf club is a huge property. It's a much harder property to lock down than Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago is about 10 to 15 minutes away. It's on the Tony Island of Palm Beach. You got to get over a bridge. It's bordered on one side by water. You can block and shut down the roads. You can't really do that as easily around the golf club, which is in a major area of West Palm Beach, major roads around there, and has this big hedge, this big shrub, where people have gone through there to take pictures of the former president. And so Ken is right. The Secret Service did a really great job in identifying this guy who was 300 to 500 yards away from the former president, noticing he was there and shooting at him, which caused the guy to run away. So in this case, they deserve a lot of credit.
They did a great job, yeah. This time, I mean, they've had so many other problems. But Ken, what have you heard about the reaction to unprecedented level of threats that are out there, whether we're talking about Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or other officials? Are they going to team up with local law enforcement agencies more aggressively?
Absolutely, Joe. They're going to do whatever they can with the level of resources they have, and they have said that they don't have enough resources, so that's an issue. But there's already a scramble going on to fix the problems that were exposed at Butler, and there were many of those, and they were perhaps more profound than even we realize now. We're awaiting the results of the investigation, but I think we're going to see now more resources thrown at protecting the candidates going forward than even we have in the past, and that may take some congressional action and some more money, guys.
All right, NBC's Ken Dilanian and State Attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida, Dave Ehrenberg. Thank you both.